Welcome to Beyond the Riverwalk, the local weekly podcast that brings San Antonio's most remarkable people, places, and events directly to you. All links discussed will be in the show notes, so sit back, relax, and join Kevin and Melissa Barron as they ask the questions that you would. Now, let's get the conversation started.
Welcome, Harrison. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Oh, doing well. We're recording on a beautiful day. I think it was storming earlier this morning, but it turned out to be a nice one. So can't complain at all. Well, thanks for being here today. I mean, I've been looking forward to talking to you. San Antonio Beer Week. It's coming up. It's going to be, and I've got my website up to be safe. It's June 15th through June 22nd of 2019. What's the history of San Antonio Beer Week, and how did it get?
San Antonio Beer Week, like you said, started about, things going on the 9th year. And it actually all started because there was two guys that started it, Jeremy Bannis and Travis Bowling. And I guess they had actually visited another city, and around the craft beer, I guess what you could say, boom, was like in 2010, and that's where everything was starting to kind of pick up. And I guess craft was becoming more mainstream. And Jeremy and Travis actually attended a beer week in Houston or Dallas, somewhere there. And I guess whenever they saw what was going on there, they kind of realized, like, hey, maybe San Antonio can kind of sustain something like this and have some kind of week that brought the community together. Because, I mean, back then there was only like 3 or 4 breweries and maybe like 2 or 3 craft beer bars, and any bars that happened to carry anything craft related was still like maybe like Blue Moon or, more approachable kind of brands that people, would consider craft or kind of explore. But whenever they kind of looked into that, they came back, they met with all the people in the beer community, business owners, and I guess they saw something there. They ended up launching it, and it's going pretty well for a few years. They had it was nothing like major. It wasn't like other cities like San Diego or pretty much anything in California Beer Week related. When they host theirs, it's like hundreds and hundreds of events. San Antonio wasn't really at that level yet, so they kind of started small, maybe like 5 or 6 events during the week that were bigger, maybe a few tap takeovers where a local brewery would just, put some taps on for the week. But it was definitely a slow start. And over the years, it's just kind of progressed, and here we are today, where most beer weeks that we host have over like 50 to 100 events. So it's getting pretty successful. And I actually didn't become a part of it too much until like 2.5, 3 years ago. I started the San Antonio Beer Magazine, SA Beer Mag, and kind of, I guess, infiltrated, if you will, because I was pretty much like handling anything in the beer community in San Antonio, beer related, because obviously a publication on beer. And so whenever I started working with them all, I guess they'd all been doing it for like 6 years at that point. And Jeremy and Travis is a journalist, and Jeremy is as well, and they've actually wrote a book together on San Antonio beer history. But I guess at that time, everyone that had been running Beer Week, was getting kind of tired of not tired of having to do it, but, they had so much going on with their own businesses and work. And after doing it for like 6 years, they kind of realized it was time to pass on the torch for some fresh blood and people that were going to be helping with it. And they all stayed on board as advisors, and they still assist us very much so. But right now, Beer Week is run by myself, Holland from Ranger Creek, Les from Southerly, and Derek from Freetail. So we've got some bigger names from the local beer community involved. And I think so far for the last 3 years since we've, started to head the entire, events, it's been really interesting to watch it grow even more.
Well, and I'm looking on the website, I mean, the map that you guys have at least 20, 30 different local breweries on there already. So how do you recruit participants?
Well, I'm glad you actually brought up the map, because we've been working on the website for the past week or two, and that was the latest thing we just actually updated. So that was a few days ago. The web designer that we use for the SA Beer Mag has taken on our web content and updates. So he'll be happy to hear that you acknowledge that. But,
it looks really good, yeah.
So I guess as far as like recruiting and getting people involved, it was kind of like a if you knew, you knew kind of thing for a few years, because everyone that was running it was, also starting their own businesses or were in the early years of their businesses. So it wasn't like everyone had all of the free time or mainly free time just to go around and talk and, preach the gospel of Beer Week. At least in the past 2 years since I've been helping. Obviously, I run with the magazine, I have to do a lot of community outreach, and I'm pretty well connected with everyone because they're always sending in updates for the breweries, giving us like blog content, and just making sure that, we're kind of spreading the word of what they're putting out. So luckily I'm in the position where I actually get to meet with a lot of people that are interested in doing events. And that probably is the best way, I guess, where we get to spread the word and get people pulled in, because in the past it was kind of like, hey, we just depend on you all to come up with an event and submit it to Beer Week and we'll just promote it. But now it's kind of like a very big community effort where not only if they come to us with their events, we'll also work with them on putting together events or give them guidelines or structure of what they should be looking at. And that kind of helps us because instead of doing something typical like a tap takeover, which kind of happens throughout the year a lot, we actually get to make these Beer Week events now kind of more special, where it'll be like rare tappings. It'll be a specialty keg or beer that they'll brew with a local brewery if it's like a restaurant or a bar. We'll do like kind of smaller beer festivals. I know this year we're putting together a midweek celebration, which is going to be live music and a barbecue and like just a bunch of like kind of like a backyard party, and it's going to be at the Paper Tiger. So
okay,
we're excited to kind of see it spread into a kind of more community based as opposed to just being beer related. But we're getting some really good, I guess, events this year, and we've been actually integrating music over the past few years with events when we can, and kind of pulling in different businesses that aren't exactly beer related but have that interest in beer and want to kind of bring in the market to them as well and work together. And so it's not just like bars and restaurants and breweries. We can actually get anyone involved, makers, anyone that works in like some kind of craft. And there's a lot of room for crossover. So that's usually our best way, I guess, of going about it, is just word of mouth at this point, but also our community engagement and us meeting with anyone that we can in our free time.
So if anyone's listening and they would like to put on an event, it looks like there is a submission place that they can contact you guys through the website and have that officially listed. Is there a lead time or something that people need to be aware of in terms of working with you?
So there's still plenty of time. We usually don't cut off the event submission until like the 12th, even though it's just a few days before Beer Week. We definitely want a little bit more heads up, but we want to make sure we include anyone we can. So it's all fair game up until then. So we welcome and we want everyone to kind of get as involved as they can or reach out. And even if they can't directly do an event, see what they can do to work with us. We have a lot of brands that will contribute merchandise or, stuff for a giveaway. And those really help because San Antonio likes free stuff. Who doesn't? So if we can lure people into to an event and then also give away stuff in partnership with local businesses, it's, even better. We've partnered with people in the past that even donated like Spurs tickets and things like that, where it's like really gets people interested. So they might not show up exactly for the beer, but they'll come for the prize giveaways and definitely have a few beers while they're there.
Yeah, and they'll discover something, learn something in the process. The show is being listened to now, not only locally, but we're seeing people from various different countries that are tuning in. But a lot of people may not know, if you're not a craft beer person, what makes a beer a craft beer versus just a regular big company beer.
We're going to need another 3 hours on this to go over it, but we'll try and condense some of that information.
Yeah, like thumbnail sketch, I guess, for now. We'll have to have you back for the other part.
I would say it's pretty straightforward, in my opinion, because there's a lot of people that will try and define what craft beer is on a very molecular level, and they'll get into like the nitty gritty, the details of it. I mean, craft beer is just something that's brewed, that's not like a macro beer from like your Budweiser or your Anheuser-Busch, and anything that's just kind of more specialty and took more time to, I guess, put into what they're doing. And trust me, not that big beer brands aren't putting a lot of work into what they're doing, but I guess it's like anything that's like small business related or people that are refining the craft. And it's tough nowadays. It's really tough to define what craft beer is. In recent years, there's actually been a new signifier on products like bottles and cans. And if you go to a brewery or you visit a website and it says independent beer. So where craft beer has kind of deviated over the years, it used to be like 8 or 9 years ago, a craft beer was a beer that was not just a light lager. It wasn't just your Bud Light. a craft beer was going to be like a Belgian-inspired beer like Blue Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, that was extreme craft people. You were seeing, brands like Dogfish Head or Rogue starting to have heavy distribution in America throughout. And it'd be just small things like that where craft was something that people weren't recognizing because it just wasn't what they're used to. But craft beer is just beer that isn't macro lagers or light lagers.
There's a big variety from what I've seen out there. There's just tons of different types. And as the map indicated, we were talking about it a minute ago, there's 20, 30 different breweries on there. And you talked about, I guess, when the Beer Week first started back in 2011, I believe, there were only a handful. So what do you think has contributed locally to the growth of the number of breweries? I'd imagine you've seen a lot of industry trends and changes in doing the magazine.
Every market, every major city or even small city will see a fluctuation in like the amount of breweries. You have like Portland, San Diego, Chicago. Those have a ton of breweries. They just have for like the past few decades. Like I guess it just caught on. People knew what it was and were interested. But you have markets like San Antonio specifically. It was a slow growth process. And I mean, we are a Dos Equis town, and we always probably will be. But I think as craft beer as a whole was starting to be widely distributed, you had bigger craft beer brands going in and actually hiring reps, representatives for their brand coming into town, and kind of, I guess, speaking to it a little bit more really helped. You had big beer noticing the trends in craft, which they kind of laughed at for a long time. And they're like, that's never going to be popular. That's just, hogwash. We're not worried about that. And then they started noticing people actually cared. And then they kind of took a stance of, no, craft beer isn't even good. No one's going to be into that. They didn't even want to like give it attention. Then they started to have to, and they started buying up brands because they realized you can't beat them, join them. And that kind of made it difficult for a lot of people and people that were diehard into craft because they wanted to support like smaller businesses. And I guess with that, you start seeing the changes. If you can't trace like where this beer is, being backed from, if it's a beer coming in from another state that might be owned by a major company, you might not know who actually owns it. But if you come to like a locally owned brewery, you can just go ask, hey, where's your owner? They'll be like, hey, John, come out from the back, and you'll get to talk with that owner. So it kind of brings people closer to like what they're, buying and working with. So the trend in craft beer to being more locally based has been awesome because of that. And you start seeing neighborhood craft breweries pop up instead of these breweries that are putting out like 100,000 barrels a year, which is a lot of beer.
Yeah.
I think the biggest brewery in San Antonio is barely putting out like 6,000 barrels a year in comparison. So it just kind of became harder for these brands that were growing across the country to maintain their markets when these kind of like small pockets were popping up of neighborhood breweries. And instead of going to the grocery store and kind of trying to decipher the hundreds of brands on the shelf, they could just go to the bar or the brewery down the street. And it was just, an easier option and way more straightforward. And as that trend kind of continued, people realized that neighborhood breweries were kind of the way to go, or more local, because you knew what you were getting and you knew where to get it directly.
Well, we had an earlier episode this year with Dan Ward with Craft Cruiser and the tours. And I can tell you, I wasn't able to go on the tour. My wife did. And unfortunately, she's not part of the show today. Have you seen that become part of Beer Week? I mean, are people coming in from out of town, maybe from Austin or Houston or elsewhere, to attend these events? Because I'd imagine there's more than one a day. There's probably dozens of different things going on. How do you think this contributes to the local community and the development of the industry, if you want to call it that, here in town?
I mean, you're definitely right about that. We get a lot of messages from people that are like, hey, I'm going to be traveling through San Antonio. When is Beer Week going to be this year? Because we do change it up. Some years it'll be in April. Sometimes it'll be in May. This year we have it in June, which I think is actually furthest we pushed it back into the year. We're trying to avoid, major things like Fiesta and things like that. But it's definitely big with the tourists, because I think anyone that's traveling kind of looks into where they're going and seeing what the locals are going to be doing, and they want to actually experience where they're going. They're not trying to travel to go to a Chili's. They're trying to travel to go see what that city is actually made up of. So whenever you have things like Beer Week, and if someone's traveling through San Antonio, which we're a huge tourist town, it actually opens up a lot of outlets for tourists coming through. And with the magazine that we do, we distribute the magazine to over like 200 locations around Central and South Texas. But our biggest mover is actually the San Antonio Visitor Center, which is great. But you just see people pick it up, and we have a directory in there of all the breweries, much like the map you see on the website.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I walk into countless breweries and bars over the years that we've been printing the magazine, and the number one page or like area they're in, directories. You just see people going through it and looking at these breweries, and they're pulling up Yelp, or they're going on Instagram, and they're like seeing what that business is about. And if it's, in relation to the area they're in, they're going to go visit it probably. And the more events we start to offer through Beer Week, the better, because it's spread out. I mean, it's downtown. It'll be like on the northeast side. It'll be south side, anywhere. So the more events we have going on during the week, the more opportunity tourists or anyone that isn't necessarily as involved with the beer scene has an opportunity to try something, because it's not just in one area and out of reach for a lot of people. I mean, you have various events going on throughout the city at various times. So it's really good.
Well, we've been in town in San Antonio for a little over 3 years now, and we lived in the Carolinas for a while. I had some friends in North and South Carolina that were big into craft beer. One of them was an attorney, or I guess is an attorney. And the states have had, in various states have had challenges, and the legislatures in trying to figure out how to regulate these things and what they needed to do for tasting rooms and all that. Has there been a change in legislation that's allowed maybe some of the number of local breweries to grow, or has Texas not had that challenge maybe that other states has?
Oh, no. Texas is by far one of the worst. And it's really unfortunate, because, I mean, we're such a vast state. We're huge, but it's only been up until recently, in the past 5 or 6 years, that I think like the beer scene has been able to grow because of like legislation, like changes and updates. We actually had the biggest, like, I guess, push from it being from local brewery owners actually going to the Capitol and speaking for it and actually fighting for it, as opposed to just being like, wow, this law sucks, guess we have to deal with it. And you actually have people like Scott Metzger, who previously he was the founder of Freetail Brewing here in town, and one of the first breweries to actually become prominent in San Antonio. He actually was driving up to Austin almost every day and fighting the laws on production brewing and the way that you could purchase beer, because a while back, if you sold beer at your brewery, like a brew pub, you could not distribute your beer anywhere else. It was ridiculous. So if you made it there, you could only sell it there, and you couldn't sell it in stores. Or if you sold it in stores, you couldn't sell it at your tap room. It was just ridiculous laws like that. And we're still facing, a lot of weird laws, but Scott Metzger and breweries from Austin and a lot of contributors and I guess people wanted to fight the law came in, because it wasn't like they didn't want to just sit there and take it. So once that actually happened, once they fought that law and changed it, you saw a lot of breweries kind of, I guess, deviate from their business plan and actually could break into other markets or start doing something they never thought was, possible whenever they opened their business, because of the way that laws were set up. So that's been a tremendous thing and a huge growth for the beer community because of stuff like that. So we're still fighting pretty bad legislator today, like pretty bad laws, but we at least have enough people in the brewing scene and beer market to want to stand up to it. It's not like a David versus Goliath anymore now. I mean, it always will be, but it's definitely more Davids there.
Well, that's all it takes, I guess, huh? People to work together. Yeah, I remember one of the big challenges was that they had to offer food if they were going to have a tasting room. And a lot of these places were set up, they were breweries. They weren't exactly set up like restaurants. So they'd partner with food trucks and things like that. Has that happened? Is that something you see here locally?
I mean, I personally think that food and beer goes hand in hand, so it makes sense. But having laws because of, stating that you have to have food in order to serve alcohol is very odd to me. And you'll see people kind of work around it, and especially with like the law where you can't order beer before noon on Sunday unless you have it with food, and breweries will get away with that and open earlier, or bars or restaurants, and they'll just like put a $1 order of peanuts on your tab, and then it's like, there you go, like that's food. And it's just so archaic to think that that's what we have to do in order to like serve beer or any type of alcohol. It's like, really, do you really think that like if the workaround for that is as easy as saying, here, I put out a bowl of peanuts or like offered some chips, then we should probably get rid of that. Because it's not doing whatever they need to. If they have some reasoning behind why they do it, it's not there. Like they're just making, I think a lot of it is just they don't want to go into the work of changing the laws since they've been around for so long, or they just don't have the time or energy to even want to focus on it. So there's bigger fish to fry. So they just kind of like leave it there. So it's going to take people in the community to fight against it to actually get that changed.
Is that what you find as well? Is there really a community surrounding this? What's that like? I mean, is it a family atmosphere? Is it more of a business camaraderie, or what would you say from your perspective?
If my girlfriend has to go with me to one more place where I know everyone there, she's going to go crazy. And she just knows that's how it is. It's like, I guess you could say more of a family. Like people that like, craft beer probably like locally owned restaurants or, not chain brands. And you'll see these people all over, not just tied to the beer scene, but you obviously will see it more prominent in the beer scene. But people like options, and we all have our local watering holes, but we all venture out occasionally. So the crossover is insane, and the family aspect of it, where we can go anywhere and see people we know. It's comforting, I would say it's really interesting to watch that. And I think it probably all started on the business level, where these people were all fighting for their lives and they were putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it. So now at this point, the big war is kind of over for now. And so they can all kind of relax and just be friends and work together. I mean, Beer Week is a testament to that, where you have every brewery in town, for the most part, coming out and supporting this and actually working together, because they know that this isn't some like dog eat dog market right now. It's like, hey, we got to band together to survive, or like even just make this grow. And we're not fully grown yet, and we're still growing. And I'm not sure that we'll ever see, animosity amongst each other, but we're definitely living in this like great friendship renaissance where everyone wants to go support each other. I see brewers that work for, one brewery having beers on their day off at another brewery, or, going to like support a new beer release that they do, or just sending people other ways. Like you'll be at a brewery and they'll say like, oh, what else is around here? And they'll like direct their customer at their bar or brewery to another place that is owned by someone else, and they're not going to get that money, because they understand that it's good for everyone. Like the more, I guess, recognition or awareness, it's good for everyone. So we're definitely a family in that sense.
That's pretty cool. Well, I was just going back and pulled up the website. I want to make sure I get all this stuff right again. So the SA Beer Week this year is June 15th through June 22nd. It looks like the opening party is at Roadmap Brewing. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Roadmap Brewing is one of the newer breweries in town, and they're located kind of by the Hay Street Bridge. I would say downtown adjacent.
Okay.
I believe they're on North Alamo Street, but that's an interesting event, because in years past, I guess we had some internal turmoil as far as hosting big events or like main events for Beer Week at a brewery, because it was like, people didn't want to, I guess they wanted like, we need like a neutral zone. We need like a neutral venue. And now we've kind of opened up the idea like, no, we should, if we are truly working together, we should probably have an event. We shouldn't be afraid to have an event at another business. So that was probably the only time we didn't all work together, is because we wanted, I think it was like, why don't we host it at my brewery or my venue? But Roadmap's hosting it this year, and they're very generous to donate their space, but they're in a perfect area, and they're the perfect size brewery for an event like this. So we're actually going to have all of the local brewers there. And in like previous years, we'll have like our kickoff party at Main Plaza downtown, which is always super exciting, because we just have tourists passing by and they're like, hey, what's going on here? And it's like, we have live music and food trucks and beer. We're pouring beers for like $4 or $5. Like, it's great. But this one kind of, like, now that we've grown, we have such a following, we kind of get to be more intimate with the community. And this is actually going to be like a ticketed purchase. You got to purchase tickets for this event, but you get the glassware for the year, and you get drink tickets, and you have, like, you know, you can just go wild and try every brewery. And, you know, when we host events at Main Plaza, we have to kind of keep what we're offering more realistic, because we know that if, you know, the random guy walking up off the street comes in, they're probably not going to want like a barrel-aged stout or like a barley wine or triple IPA. They're going to want like a lager or something refreshing, or a pale ale. But now we actually get to, with this event, we get to be a little bit more crazy, and we actually ask that every brewery in town bring a super specialty beer that they offer, not something that people can go pick up at their local grocery store or like liquor store. We want it to be something very special, and that's going to be the big draw for this one. And we'll save that more approachable party or, like, I guess, light beer event for the midweek celebration, because it's going to be live music, a barbecue, and just kind of a hangout. So that's the day we're going to be doing, like, I guess your just everyday beer that they might have on shelves everywhere. But for this kickoff party, it's going to be really interesting, because it's going to be beers that people really won't be able to try again, or if they do, it's going to be not for a while.
And then you've got, like you said, the midweek is at Paper Tiger, and it looks like there's just going to be lots of other events, beer dinners, pub crawls. I mean, you name it, seminars. And you talked about the special releases and the collaboration beer, which I think, is that something that's going to be available at the kickoff or just during the midweek or something?
I'm sure any event that we try and host or work with, we're going to have the collaboration beer at, because that is, like, you know, kind of our staple for the week, if you will. We'll probably have it out in the weeks leading up to Beer Week at special kind of like events, or just anywhere we want to kind of promote Beer Week before it actually happens. But the collaboration beer will definitely be around town. And I'm actually really excited for this one.
Well, when you get the press release, if you could just include us in the distribution, I want to make sure that we share the information when we post the show, as well as hopefully we can get there. My wife is the one who really enjoys different kinds of beer to try, and I enjoy talking to you, so I think it'd be great to meet you and learn a little bit more about everything else that's going on in the community. So thanks for taking the time, Harrison. I really appreciate this.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Well, again, it's from June 15th to June 22nd. You can go out to sabeerweek.org and also follow them on Instagram and other social media. And again, I guess the last thing is, if you got an idea for an event, you want to submit it to SA Beer Week, just go to the website and click on the link that says host an event at the top right. Thank you again, Harrison, for being here. If there's anything we could do to help promote it, just give us a holler or tag us on social, and we'll be sure to share it with everybody else as well.
Of course, yeah. And I'm going to make sure y'all come out. We gotta have you.
Oh, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. All right, well, we're going to talk to you and hopefully see you soon.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Riverwalk. Send your comments, questions, and suggestions to podcast@beyondriverwalk.com. As always, subscriptions to our show are free and available wherever you find podcasts, as well as on our website. Until next week, join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more conversations about our community.